Let's rank every hero equipment from worst to best to make your heroes stronger. Starting with the F tier, we have the new Fireball. The Fireball is currently one of the worst hero equipment to use due to its low synergy with other equipment, with a minor exception to the Rage Gem. While it's not worth running as a supportive tool, it does work really well in a double hero charge, but it might be too difficult and inconsistent for most players to run. It could also work sometimes in Super Witch Smash or Super Archer Blimps, but oftentimes it's really not worth investing and running with. Also staying within the F tier is the Barbarian puppets. The Barbarian puppets are just extremely easy to replace. They're usually never worth running unless you don't have the blacksmith built. It will often give you less value in most situations, but the good news is that if you did want to run it, you can always use it with a standard hero dive with the Warden, which can allow the Barbarian puppets to stay alive and dish some serious damage while being raged up and invulnerable. Next is the C tier. These are pretty situational, but can still work in more than just one army, starting with the Giant Arrow. The Giant Arrow is a pretty niche option, but can often work in sniping off defenses like an air defense or sweeper, or can even be run in a Zapquake, where you can remove something like the Eagle Artillery and an Inferno Tower. Outside of that, it's just not really worth investing into or even running this piece of equipment, but what is worth doing is subscribing to the channel and ringing the bell so you don't miss quality content like this. Also staying within the C tier is the Earthquake Boots. The Earthquake Boots really aren't that particularly good. However, this does allow you to open up the base, and at certain town hall levels and with certain strategies, this can be quite good paired with some other abilities like the Giant Gauntlet. But realistically, the higher you go in town hall level, the worse this equipment will be. Next is the B tier. These are some fairly good abilities, but can still be replaced, starting with the Seeking Shield. Despite this getting outclassed by some of the newer hero equipment from hers, it's still a very solid ability. The DPS is nothing to scoff at, and it can still one-shot some very good defenses. But outside of that, it can kind of sometimes be an issue, since there's no way to save her through something like a single target Inferno, or to stop skeleton traps or the Barbarian King from targeting her. The Archer puppets are going from the F tier all the way up into the B tier. The Archer puppets are a pretty decent option in most situations, as despite the weakness to scatter shots, they can still work incredibly well, especially if you don't have the frozen arrow or if you're trying to save ores for other equipment or epics, such as the Giant Gauntlet or the Fireball, though I don't recommend wasting your ores on it. Another ability going from A tier down into the B tier is the Rage Gem. The Rage Gem is currently a pretty solid equipment. In some smash attacks or even in dragon or super dragon attacks, it can work pretty well, and especially works well at Town 11 and 12, where you can really take full advantage of the ability. Fireball also synergizes with the Rage Vial, or even using it in a Super Witch Smash, since you're typically not running too many rage spells. However, outside of that, it can definitely be replaced by some more supportive abilities. And the Vampstash is staying within the B tier. The Vampstash is in a pretty decent spot, as its ability allows you to keep your king alive, which can be really good. However, the bigger issue is that the Vampstash cannot handle high DPS defenses. It is amazing when your king can basically turn into a golem in terms of HP with all the healing when he's being targeted by lesser defenses or not that much damage. However, against a lot of DPS or versus a monolith or single Inferno, it often will lose because the healing isn't enough to keep him alive. And one of the two new abilities for the Royal Champion, the Hog Puppets, is going at the top of B tier. As for the Hog Puppets, they can be quite substantial in attacks for Town Hall 14 and Town Hall 15, since having maxed Hog Riders at Town Hall 14 and 15 can really help, but is very good with the Royal Gem thanks to the fact that the healing that the RC gets from both abilities basically gives your Royal Champion a second shot at life, alongside that she can move through anything realistically and force anything to retarget onto the Hogs or other troops thanks to the invisibility that she gets from this ability. Next is the A tier. These are very flexible hero equipment that you honestly can run in different attacks. starting with the healer puppets. The healer puppets are oftentimes a solid ability to run due to it working very well to keep your queen alive outside of queen charges and smash style attacks. This is a great ability to invest into to keep your queen alive, especially since this is very flexible in things like air spam, hero dives, or even in spam attacks. The life gem is going from the B tier up into the A tier. The life gem is oftentimes an overlooked ability, as while it does provide the same effect as the apprentice Warden, it's much more beneficial for attacks like Super Bowlers, Lavaloon, or even Hybrid, all of which can take full advantage of the increased HP, since it no longer is a percentage and it's just a flat HP increase, which can be quite substantial for non-tanky units. The Frozen Arrow is another piece of equipment that is unfortunately going from S tier down into the A tier. The Frozen Arrow is a pretty solid ability, as it can basically slow down anything. Any defensive unit or defense is very prone to it, and it can be incredibly good for things like Queen Charge or really any type of attack. It can synergize incredibly well with a wide variety of her abilities, especially since it is a passive. The only downside is that you have the chance to possibly get your queen killed through her ability, but outside of that, as long as you're smart about it, this can get you some pretty solid value. The second of the newest Royal Champion abilities, the Haste Vial, is going into A tier. Now, one of the two newest abilities for the Royal Champion, the Haste Vial does a lot for her, as it just increases her movement speed and attack speed. Since it basically speeds her up so much, she can absolutely clear through buildings like it's nothing, as it's a very solid ability to pair at Tunnel 16 thanks to having the Fox Pet. For the Royal Gem, this one is going from the B tier all the way up into the A tier. The Royal Gem is a really strong hero equipment due to it allowing you to basically get a ton of healing. This is a must use for the Royal Champion due to the healing being quite substantial, and without having that healing, you're going to notice that your Royal Champion might not live through a ton. This not only has good pairing with all of her other abilities, but this is very good with the Hog Puppets as well. And the Rage Vial. This is staying within the top of A tier. The Rage Vial is hands down one of the best abilities for the king due to its raw power to support through light and heavy DPS. Compared to the Vampstash, it can often get through things like monoliths a lot faster thanks to its DPS increase and increased movement speed. But of course, what's even better is to use my creator code CORRUPT to support me and everything I do here on the channel. Now we get to the S tier, the best of the best, the must-use abilities that can work on a wide variety of strategies, starting with the Invisibility Vial that's going from the A tier up into the S tier. The Invisibility Vial has become one of the most important abilities for the game as time goes on, and with the queen, survivability is a must in order for her to get value. It basically pairs extremely well with every single one of her abilities, with the exception of the Giant Arrow, of course. This ability is definitely one that you will want to invest into, as it can really get you through any form of tough queen charge, or even in things like air spam or hero dive, just to force the defenses to re-target from your queen or just not target her at all. Also, staying within the S tier is the Healing Tome. Now, the Healing Tome is often considered to be another fantastic hero equipment thanks to healing just being such a strong option in most attacks, as the Healing Tome can get a lot of value that way. Of course, this cannot be used in every attack, but there are a lot of attacks that can very much take full advantage of the 25-second ability of the Healing Tome, that it is a safe choice in most strategies, especially for troops that have a decent amount of HP or are tanks. And of course, we have two pieces of equipment that are very similar to strength and are must use, one of which being the Eternal Tome. The Eternal Tome is one of the two best abilities that you will always want to run in this game. The Eternal Tome is just hands down the most important ability for the Warden, since it synergizes well with 99% of attacks and is just way too flexible, and its invincibility is basically unmatched. Not even the Fireball, with its 4,000 damage and 6 tile radius, it can't even compare to the utility of the Eternal Tome. And of course, the other ability that's tied with the Eternal Tome in terms of strength has to be the Giant Gauntlet within the S tier. The Giant Gauntlet is also another ability that you're pretty much just always gonna run. The Gauntlet is just too strong to be left alone and not utilized. Not running this ability can basically get you less value. The King with the Giant Gauntlet though, with its damage reduction and splash damage, is just super important for him, and having that underneath one ability is really helpful. It can get a huge amount of value. If there's one epic I would prioritize right now, it would be the Giant Gauntlet over the Fireball in terms of investment. And that is your tier list. Be sure to screenshot with me in it if you're going to share it. Otherwise, be sure to check out my Queen Charge or Queen Charge Lava Loon guides, as they are incredibly detailed and very good at making sure you can get more 3 stars.